everybody, we're outside today. We're going to be planting our onion transplants and our radishes. The soil temps have come up to 40 degrees. There's no freezing or frost in the forecast for the next week or so. So we're going to start spreading some of our compost and get that tilled in.
We got a primary till on the garden yesterday and tore up our spot for our onions. We need to spread the composted manure across the top and till that in one more time and level out the seed bed. We'll be making a path with some garden fabric for getting in between these rows. And yeah, once we get that done, we'll have a little action for you showing that, and then we'll show you how we plant this stuff.
We did change, we switched sides this season for the garden. Last season we had our garlic and our onions and most of our stuff over on that side. We switched it to this side this season, and you do that to keep the nutrients rich in the soil, and it helps to prevent any vegetable diseases.
Yep. Yeah, and just following up that garlic, you know, we uncovered this garlic a couple of weeks ago. You can really see it coming up, popping up through that straw. So we'll leave the straw in place for weed control, but things are growing. So yeah, we're gonna spread out some compost and get to work.
All right, Nate is going to start spreading the compost. This really helps with your soil for your vegetables. We make sure we do this every year, but he's gonna get that spread out and rake it in, and we'll show that process, and then we're gonna till it again. Okay, he is just raking in the compost really well and kind of getting everything smoothed out. After this step, we're gonna till that into the soil, and we'll be ready to plant our onion transplants and the radishes. Okay, Nate is tilling in the compost to get it worked into the soil really well. After this step, we're going to take the rake and level everything out, and we will show you how we start planting our onion transplants. Okay, so this last step, he's just taking the other side of the rake and just kind of leveling everything off and making sure all of the compost clumps are tilled really well into the soil. How deep do we till this?
As deep as that'll go. That's got 10-inch tines on it, so we were buried all the way up to the top, which with onions and this cold weather stuff, they're a root vegetable, so you want to have really deep, loose soil to work with so that that onion, those radishes, your kohlrabi, all that stuff can get deep down in there without trouble and make a big bulb. What we're doing here is just leveling this up. Onions like to be moist, but they don't like to be wet. So if your onion bed has a hole or a dip in it that's going to collect rainwater or water from your watering can, you're going to drown out any plants that you got there. So you just want to level this off and make a nice, really soft, level seed bed.
Okay, so we have a roll of landscape fabric. We use this pretty much purely for weed control. I like to have a path where I can sit and do any weeding that needs to be done in the garden. We are kind of separating the garlic from the onions this way too. But I stake the end of it so it's easier to roll out. But we just go the length of this, and then I'll stake it again at this end. want to make sure it's pretty tight. Like I said, it really does help cut down on the weeds. So I'm going to cut this off and stake it here, and that'll be one strip down.
Yeah, we'll be ready to plant onions. All the prep work will be done.
Okay, so we are ready to start planting our onion transplants. I'm going to do a row of the red candy apple transplants first. You're going to space these 4 inches apart and put them in 1 inch deep. And we're just doing 1 row of these because the red candy apple onions don't last as long in storage as the candy ones.
We eat them all summer, but if you hang them in, you know, the candies you can hang in the dark in the basement and they'll last till maybe March. The red candy apples are done by September, October. But these, you know, if you haven't seen the other videos, these are onion transplants. We buy these from Dixondale Farms in Texas. It's on the US-Mexico border. We grew onions using sets for a lot of years. Nikki, do you have those sets? So if you're a gardener in Iowa, you're probably planting sets, and we got a couple here. We're gonna plant. Sets work, they'll grow an onion, but for us, they grow golf ball sized onions, and they always send up a bolt, you know, the flower. And when they flower, they quit growing a bulb and they just grow a flower. So we started growing these transplants several years ago. They make big, beautiful onions, and honestly, they're easier to grow, easier to plant all the way around. So this garden is just a 16-foot wide by about, I don't know, 80-foot long garden. We will plant 3 16-foot rows of onions. Once you have it tilled and set up, it goes really fast. So Nikki's gonna get these couple rows of onions planted, and then we'll stop back in to finish up and do a row of radishes. So Nikki's been busy. We have our 3 rows of onions planted. This is actually called a wide row. You got 4-inch spacing between plants with 8-inch spacing between rows. Not a lot of onions, you know, by looking at it, but there are enough onions there to feed us with all of our cooking and preservation from the end of July until late next winter. Finishing up, Nikki is planting those 3 sets just because we want to see how they perform side by side with these transplants. It didn't take too long, did it? Don't you think? So we've got everything in the ground. We're ready to do some radishes. I'm gonna hand the phone off to Nikki in a second here and show you kind of a trick for planting these really small seeds. So radish seeds are really tiny, and you want to space them like 1 inch apart, and it's really hard to do. But they only get planted just at the surface of the soil. They don't go deep. So one trick you can take is to take a 2x4 and take the corner, and when you set your row, press that corner into the soil and just make a small furrow as a mark to hit. And now if you look down there, when Nikki sprinkles these tiny seeds in, she's got a mark to shoot for. So these are the radish seeds we got. We buy these from a place online called Seeds Now. They sell a lot of small packages of seeds. I've had really good luck with everything we've ever bought from them. I'll take the phone back. And Nikki will show you her expert planting abilities. With this kind of stuff, you just gotta get it in there as best you can and thin it out once it comes up. So that's the gist of it. She's going to go down this 16-foot row, just sprinkling one every inch or two. When we're done, we'll take that 2x4 and turn the blunt end down and just press those seeds into the soil just to make contact. With the onions and the radishes, you would normally water these in once you were done. In fact, sometimes a lot of people will just water the soil before they plant, not real heavy, but just get the soil good and moist, and then it's enough to make contact. We're timing this since this is, I think Nikki said earlier, it's March 22nd. This is the perfect time of year with soil temperatures coming up. Your target temperature in our zone, in any zone with these kinds of seeds, is 40 degrees. So once the temperature hits 40 degrees at a 4-inch depth, you're good to start with your cold weather crops. It actually hit mid-40s a couple weeks ago with that warm weather we had, but then we had that cold stretch and it dipped back down in the 30s. The way it looks now, we're going to be probably 42, 43 today, and coming up from here on out. So tonight's forecast is calling for rain. We should see at least 1 inch of rain in the next 24 hours. So soil temperature is perfect. The timing is perfect with the rain coming in. The radishes will pop hopefully in the next week to 10 days. And we could be picking radishes and eating radishes by mid-April. These onions we just planted, the tops, they're green. I mean, you can see that they're green, but they're gonna sprout and they're gonna start growing up and growing leaves, and they're gonna start showing some pep here just probably in the next week or so. I'm sure Nikki will do an update, but God, she's so patient. So we're just about down to the end. We'll finish this row off. Radishes go really good next to onions because the radishes are going to be long gone by the time the onions are ready to be harvested. Radishes will be the first thing we pick. So that row's done. I'll give the phone back to Nikki. Now you can take that same 2x4 right down the row with the blunt end and just press those in.
We had a light rain earlier, so that kind of helped to keep the soil a little bit moist as well. So he's just finishing covering those up, and
yeah, that's onions and radishes. The hard part now is keeping it weeded, and luckily my beautiful wife loves to weed onions. And seriously though, the onions, the garlic, anything cold hates competition. So grass, anything's gonna grow in there, it's gonna cost you yield. So you want to keep that stuff out without using preen if you can. So yeah, that's it. Can you think of anything else?
nope.
All right, well, if you're not doing this already, you're behind. So get off your butts, get out there and plant some stuff.